So, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. I'm Merrill Chandler, and welcome to the Are You Effable podcast. Welcome to the Are You Effable podcast. In this episode, we are going to be taking down one of the greatest mysteries, the thing that held you back because you have no idea of the truth of credit scores. So, stay with me. We'll be back in a second. Welcome back, guys. This episode is going to blow your mind. Now, some of you may actually have some intuition or some kind of background gnawing at your mind going, something's wrong with this situation, because every one of us, everybody talks about their credit score. I have a good credit score. I have a bad credit score, right? But did you know that there are 28 consumer-facing credit scores, and there are over 55 industry-facing scores? There's FICO alone has 83 credit scores, okay? That credit can do with medical information, it can do with collection information, it can do with mortgage information. It is too simple and too facile for anybody to say, how is your credit score? And so you, in this episode, are going to learn what's actually going on, what game we're actually playing, and you're really going to learn how lenders and FICO kind of dangle the idea of a credit score in front of us so they can distract us from what they're actually measuring. So let's get into this right now. First of all, are all credit scores created equal? Not a chance. Not a chance. Okay? First, there are FICO scores. We're all familiar with FICO, right? But we think that there's a FICO score. You may be getting a score from your bank or your credit card issuer that says, oh, your FICO score is 723. Until you get through these episodes, and by the way, keep binging, until you get through these episodes, you don't even know what's actually being foisted upon you, what they're trying to tell you, because even FICO has a FakeO score. We'll get to that in a second, but it's going to blow your mind. After FICO scores, there are what I call FakeO scores. Now, a FakeO score, notice all of these, there are literally dozens of FakeO scores. First of all, the biggest FakeO score is the one promoted by Credit Karma. We're going to get into that a little bit later as well, but Credit Karma is literally deceiving 80 million subscribers to its credit score. It's insane because their 95% of lending decisions is based on FICO scores and specific industry FICO scores. Again, we'll cover that in a second. But Credit Karma uses a score that 3 to 4% of lenders use. And most of them are marketing scores. The lender decisions aren't even using the Credit Karma score. It's called Vantage, and we'll get into that in a second. But all of these, every one of these, in my fact checking, I went back to make sure that I only had listed here, that I'm only talking about today, the scores that are fake. And by fake, I mean they're not FICO. So let's talk a little bit about the source of these credit scores, all right? First of all, fake scores came from kind of a profiteering on part of the credit bureaus. Now, I'm not against a profit motive. What I'm against is misinformation, right? So back in the late 90s, Congress amended the Fair Credit Reporting Act. This Fair Credit Reporting Act, basically they said, because they're like, literally 60% of credit reports, credit profiles had material errors that would cause a denial. And the consumer advocacies, we at Lexington even were pushing hard on lobbying for a fair amendment to the Fair Credit Reporting Act so that the credit bureaus would be responsible for all the bad juju that they were creating out in the market, the unfair denials of credit based on bad information, right? Again, the 90s were the wild, wild west of credit reporting, etc. Now, in this period, remember, we talked about the funding game where your lender, and the credit bureau and FICO software is filtered. But if you'll notice that in this process, we actually created a place that credit bureaus were mandated by Congress to give access to your credit profile, to your data. We call it the raw data file. Now, these consumer disclosure files were designed to be offered free once per year upon request. You had to ask for it. Now, with the enclosure, that consumer disclosure file and the raw data was not a credit report. The language in the Fair Credit Reporting Act was very, very clear. If you were reporting it out there in the world to a lender, you had to give that same data to the consumer, because it's only fair that we know what's being reported about us. Now, we have access to they gave us access to it once per year through a place called annualcreditreport.com. That was the solution that the bureaus presented to Congress, saying, if you request it, you go to annualcreditreport.com and you fill out the information, and we will give you once a year free all of your raw data. Now, this did not make the credit bureaus happy. They didn't want to share the raw data, because a credit report isn't the raw data. When you got a mortgage file, credit report, or an automobile credit report, or a credit report that you filled out, and you got one of your FakeO Score credit reports, that's not the raw data. It's highly curated, shall we say, to present a particular picture. They didn't want you and I having access to all that data. So what do the bureaus do? They're like, we're doing all of this for free because Congress told us to do so. They want to know how they can make money off of this process. So what they did, and this is where the invention of these FakeO Scores came from, here's what they did. Remember, the three parties to the funding game are you, the borrower, the lender, and the credit bureaus running through the FICO software. That's the lending process. But they wanted to bypass that entire FICO process, and they literally, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion created a trade association. There's only 3 members of the trade association. They created a trade association, and they said, what if we were to offer a credit score with this when they ask for their data file? And they're like, well, here's what's amazing. To the bureaus, what's amazing, at the click of a button, the raw data could become abbreviated information, and they add a fake score. But they have to give the information for free, but it's not the raw data anymore. Because you ask for a score, they get to change the profile and shape of your data, right? And they get to give you a fake score. Now, because you and every borrower in the country didn't know this fact, when we go to get our free consumer disclosure each year, we're like, oh, I would love to have a score. I want to see how well I'm doing. And thus began I don't want to call it fraud, because fraud shows intention. But what it was, remember how we talked about in previous episodes, there's a lie and a withhold. Now, we all know a withhold is a lie, right? They're now withholding the information. They're withholding the fact that there's no disclosure that says, oh, by the way, when you buy this fake score, no lender uses this score. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to give you the raw data. We're going to give you some of the data, maybe 50 to 60% of the data in this credit report. You guys, It had less information. When you asked for that credit score, it had less information. It was less accurate, and it was a fake score. A fake score. So what they began to do is that bad information, that less than perfect disclosure, and a fake score, and everybody got on this bandwagon. Literally dozens and dozens. I share with you some of them, but the Credit Karma, Privacy Guard, Identity Secure, Credit Check Total, FreeScore.com, FreeScore 360, ScoreSense, Identity Guard, FreeScore.com, FreeCreditScore.com. All of them started getting on the bandwagon and promoting. Some of you may remember back in the day when there was the banjo player and he was dressed up in all medieval clothing and he's talking about getting his credit score. You remember that stuff? That was the heyday of deceiving customers. Now, that's really strong language. Deceiving customers. I like to call them deceiving borrowers. Not withholding the truth and not giving them a full disclosure. Well, guess what? I'm not the only one who believed this. Now, notice, in as late as 2017, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ordered TransUnion and Equifax to pay literally fines for deceiving consumers in marketing credit scores and credit products. Why were they being fined? Because the credit reporting companies misstated the cost and usefulness of the credit scores and the products they sold. They were luring consumers into costly recurring payments, $19 a month, $29 a month, $39 a month, costly recurring payments for scores that didn't even matter, scores that lenders didn't use, and they got their asses sued for promoting these lenders or these credit scores that didn't even matter. Now, the most egregious one, the most common one is exactly what we talked about. Credit Karma uses the Vantage score. It's not Credit Karma's score, just so that we're transparent. They use a FakeO score to give to all of their free subscribers. And then that score, when they refer somebody, how many of you are subscribers to Credit Karma? And how many of you have gotten a loan through their website or a credit card? Do you realize that when they pull the inquiry and check your credit and seek to approve you for that credit card or that loan, they don't even use the very the score that they're promoting on their website? Those are all FICO scores, every freaking one of them. Guys, this is insane. FICO scores versus FakeO scores. And in the next episode, we're going to be talking about how FICO even has a FakeO score. But you have to know to understand, to even get close to knowing what a lender is using, it's got to have the FICO logo with the registered trademark. If it doesn't, you're being totally duped. You are now being lied to, and you're believing the damn lie. So, just like we always do, Are You Effable means this whole podcast is devoted to sweeping the decks, cleaning up all the mythology and the BS that is being promoted out there, and getting down to the brass tacks, so that you can't be fundable unless you know exactly what how they're scoring you, right? Now, imagine a basketball game where there's literally 10 different scoreboards up there. They're not labeled, and you don't know which one they're using to determine who wins the game. That's exactly what all these FakeO scores represent. There's FICO, the FICO scores up there measuring, but you don't know which one to look at. You think all those scores are meaningful. But how many of you, come on, how many of you have gone into an auto dealership, gone in to get a loan, gone in to get a mortgage, and your Credit Karma score or your credit monitoring score says one thing, and then you get hammered on the interest rate or the loan or whatever it is because the score that the lender pulls is different than the score pulled by we'll just use Credit Karma. There have been so many people who've been discouraged or rejected for a loan that they thought they could qualify for because they were counting on a FakeO score. You may be one of those. We run our students and clients. We run into this all the time. They're like, "Hey, can I come to your boot camp and I can bring my Credit Karma score?" I'm like, first of all, that's why you're coming to the damn boot camp, is to learn that that's complete bullshit. What you just asked me, bless your heart, I understand that you don't know, but you got to figure out what they're measuring and what tools they are using to measure your fundability, or everything you're doing is completely worthless. So, if you're a Credit Karma subscriber, I would love, sorry, not sorry. I met with some investors who are just totally psyched about what we're doing and how we're building this fundability model. And he was a fan. One of the investors was total fan of Credit Karma. And when I finished my 10-minute presentation on the difference between good credit, bad credit, or fundable, not fundable, he was angry. And I hope you're angry too. He was angry because he believed that what was being broadcast to him, what his file said on Credit Karma, was legit, because he believed there's one credit score. And you're going to find out in the next episodes, guys. Keep binging it, especially now, so you can get through all of these. You're going to find out there's a multiplicity of not just credit scores, but different bureau scores and different versions of software. Like, there is the credit equivalent of a Windows 98 version of FICO software versus a Windows 10. Guys, stick with me, because we are here to pull back the curtain, and you've got to know the truth of what's happening out there, or otherwise you might as well not even play this game. So, are you effable? To be effable, you have to know what they're measuring, and you got to know what scoreboard to look at. And I'm telling you, we're going to get into that in the next episode. But until then, I'm Merrill Chandler, and I am the host of Are You Effable? And we are here to take down all the myths and all the bullshit, so you know exactly what time it is when it comes to how to become fundable. I will see you next time. Hey guys, thank you for listening to Are You Effable? Please leave comments, because I would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit fundinghackers.com to view the blog post, get important links, join our community, and much, much more. And you gotta tell your friends about this podcast. We want them to become effable too.